There he is, folks. There he
is.
is, Jeffrey Jacklich. I gotta tell you, I've got to tell you a couple things about him that maybe he doesn't want really kind of revealed.
Oh, I'm afraid we.
It could be.
Should I leave the room?
No, yeah, why don't you leave the room and we'll talk about you, and then you can come back in.
Yeah, you guys can talk amongst yourselves.
That's right. Guys, what is going on out there today? Thanks for hanging out with us, with me and Jeff over here at goldballhunting.com. Another episode of our podcast, which you can find over on YouTube, the video version and the audio version, iTunes, or over at Stitcher, or however you want to consume it. It's out there. You can find it. You can find it. Just search Goldball Hunting. And actually, what we're still offering is a complimentary, that would be free, private 10-minute coaching call. The three of us, you, me, and Jeff, we get in the phone. It's a conference call. I mean, it's a three-way call, and you got to bring that one thing in your game right now that, man, it's a little off. It's not quite right.
A little left to center.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be technique, it could be strategy, it could be mental, it could be a whole host of things. But whatever it is, we want to help put you on the path to get that thing solved sooner than later, so that you can start getting the result that you want, whether you're a singles player, doubles player, or maybe both. And so the way to do that is go over to goldballhunting.com. First name, email address, click the button, and you'll get a couple of very cool things. Number one, you get immediate access to our online calendar scheduler where you can cherry pick the date and time that works best for you. The other thing you're going to get, though, is a video that Jeff and I recorded way back when we started. We're into episode number 100 plus somewhere.
Yeah.
So this would be months ago, and I am going a little nuts here with this guy every day. But other than that. But it's a great video that Jeff and I recorded about how to build confidence in your game by helping you reduce your skill level range, meaning one day here, really play well, top your level. Go home, honey, I've got the game figured out. And she goes, okay, dear, that's great, that's great. And then the next day you go out and you lay an egg, thud. And you go home and she goes, hey, babe, how'd it go today? Knowing full well that you're going to go, oh, God, it wasn't so great today. And she says, oh, so you still don't have the game quite figured out yet, do you? Okay,
right.
All right. So we want to help you reduce that skill level range. So every day when you play, you know how you're going to play. You get to go home and go, yep, babe, I've got it figured out. So that's a cool video that we did. But it's a private video. You'll get access to it when you get on our email list. So, Jeff, before we start with our topic today, which you don't know about, but I think you're going to like it.
I also don't know what you're about to say about. I'm going to share some things about Joe.
No, I'm not going to. I'm actually going to let that go. I'm going to let the people think about the big question mark about what's the dark side of Jeff Jacklich? What stuff is out there that maybe
lurking
that he doesn't want to. And I keep thinking about it, and I keep talking to him and privately, and I haven't come up with anything yet. So it's just kind of a bunch of BS. Anyway, what's going on? You're in Fresno, and this is like the fourth recording we've done today. And I guess people do realize we're not literally recording some new podcast, even though we're publishing every day. But you're in Fresno, so give us the 25 words or less.
Don't get the wrong impression. This is not Rod Serling's Night Gallery or the Twilight Zone that I've somehow in a time loop stuck at the Comfort Inn and Suites in Fresno. But I'm down here because there's a kind of an alumni gathering of the Fresno State tennis team. Fresno's hosting the Mountain West Conference tournament this week.
You being a Fresno State alum.
And I'm an alum, And so I thought I wanted to come down and kind of touch base and reconnect with some friends before I head out to Michigan next week. So here I am.
Is that next week you're going?
Yeah. So it's next Sunday. So
oh my gosh.
This this is Friday, so yeah, like I said, the days are accelerating very quickly here. It's
boy,
happening.
Well, we have a lot of work to do in our singles playbook before you go.
Yeah.
I want to get that done, and frankly, my video editing is just about done.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So not that I want to add any more pressure to what you've got going on. Anyway, so guys, listen, thanks for hanging out with us today. And the topic I've got is something that one of our the guys that we love to listen to, books, podcasts, Tim Ferriss, talks about a lot. And it's a 2-word phrase, and it is optimal minimalism. So we talk a lot about the importance of paring down, sort of cutting out stroke technique that doesn't really make that stroke any better. And in fact, too much stuff kind of gets in the way and creates a lot of inconsistency, shot making inconsistency. But it's also the same thing in terms of shot choices or tactics and strategies. You always say, variety is not a strategy. It's just a menu, a long list of possible things that aren't optimal and are not minimalist, right? Optimal minimalism. So I've always thought if I was to go back and start, and I retired from club coaching from California Tennis Club in San Francisco back in 2005. And yes, I've done a little bit of on-court coaching in the last 14 years. Wow, 14 years.
Wow.
It's been a long time. But that my job would be not to add one more layer of stuff to my student, but to actually take stuff away. Put them on video, look at this and go, just like Mr. Stowe used to love to say about my forehand, that little flare on top, Mr. Abel, you don't really need it. In fact, stop it. Get rid of that.
Like right now.
Yes, don't ever, or there's the gate. So, optimal minimalism. What does that mean to you in terms of? And maybe it doesn't mean anything positive. Maybe it's wrong. But to me, there is some positivity in terms of how we want to compete, in terms of how we want to practice, how we want to compete, how we want to train, all the components that kind of make up the possibilities we could do as a tennis player. What are your thoughts on as Tim Ferriss says? And I also think I think a lot of other online business guys, gurus, talk about this thing called a minimal viable product.
Right.
Which is what's the least advice or recommendation I can give a product, a service that will yield the biggest bang for the buck. Right.
Exactly. So in tennis, like you described, how many moving parts do you have, right? We've got this machine, the human body. Generally, it works the same for everybody. The kinetic chain is this basic kind of flow of the body, depending on what activity you're doing. There is an optimal way for that specific activity to get the highest and best result. But you do have to who are you working with? Do they have an eye for that? Do they understand and get that it's not about adding, but it is about finding the path really of least resistance within that highest, best, most efficient production value of that stroke. Like a good example for me, like off the tennis court is, I have an art studio and I've done, sculpture and done some major work here in the Napa Valley at some wineries. And so in the construction process, you initially have an idea, and especially when you're doing custom, it's not standard issue. It's like it's all like this whole thing has never been built before. The size is different. The materials aren't necessarily, these materials aren't normally used together. So whatever, there's just like all this stuff that we're doing, because we're inventing it now. We're making it happen right now. But even in that process, we lay out the process, and then you kind of go, okay, right now we have 17 steps to get to the finish. What don't we need in there? And then you might be able to go back through and go, okay, we got it down to 11, which means it's another great phrase I learned from my good friend Ron Cox is cost-effective, creative solutions. So it's not about it's the most expensive material. It's the most expensive guy to build it, and it's going to take the longest amount of time. So none of that is cost-effective or creative, right? So that was always the process that we used. And sometimes we'd start something that actually had multiple. We had to do it more than once, right? So depending on what we were doing. And so sometimes it started out at 20 steps. And by the time we got to the second one, now that we'd done it, we figured out a way to make this section of making this thing more efficient. So now it went from 20 steps to 17 steps. And by the time we get maybe to the last one, because we've got to do 6 of these things, whatever it might be,
right?
We're down to 9 steps,
right? Because
we eliminate this, because we can do this, because, okay, listen, if we use that tool that we normally don't use in this, but you know what, it makes this happen. I mean, so we were constantly seeing, let's say, the clarity, seeing kind of line of sight. Do you have line of sight in the production value of your stroke? Meaning, in shooting something, right, in shooting a gun, you need line of sight, which is the straight line between you and your target, and in tennis and stroke production, finding, again, the fewest amount of elements, fewest amount of steps to hit the most efficient ball you can. Because every extra step you have in there is just another possibility that something can go off the rails.
Well, it's not sustainable.
Right.
It is not sustainable. And I like the way you just described how you would create something, got me thinking that really in tennis, what we need to know first is what is the result that we want? Well, and basically the result is I want the ball to land at a certain spot over there, right?
Right.
That's the end result, right? And so how do I work my way back from that with the least amount of stuff to get the ball over there? I mean, look, if I could take my racket and hold it in both ends and just sort of, do this and get the result in a way that would be what I want, I think I'd do that. I don't think that I would. I don't think I'd do this crazy, all this other stuff. But so, I think that's what players need to figure out. Well, here's the result I want. I want the ball to land there, and by the way, make sure that where you decide you want the ball to land doesn't always mean that guy or that gal cannot touch it.
Right.
Right. Let's be
realistic.
We're
not talking about this little 1-inch, box in the far reaches of the galaxy in the corner over there.
That's right. So, and let's take an offensive rally ball, and a top spin, semi-top, doesn't have to be heavy, forehand rally ball that's got some offense to it, meaning that it's got a little juice to it. Where do you want it to land? And then pull it back from there technique-wise. What's the least amount I could do, racket work-wise, to be able to get that result? And I think too often what happens is people start from the very beginning, which is, well, I've got to have a grip, I've got to have a swing shape, I've got to have this, I've got to have that, and then they find out that I can't control that. I can 1 out of 20 times I can hit the ball over there, but the 19 other times it's not happening. So that's what I was hoping we would get to with this Tim Ferriss philosophy on optimal minimalism. And so there you have it.
Well, okay. Did I go off the rails there? Did I actually get to it?
I thought it was a great example you brought up. And I think for me, it brought, as you were talking, it brought up the tennis is that way too, in terms of
Yeah.
We sort of have this, I'm not going to call it, but we have a process. It's like I can't remember the construction term for it. But anyway, so it's the same thing with tennis, right? You were trying to figure out, here's the end result I want with this piece of art. How can I get there with the least amount of steps, spending the least amount of money, right? It's kind of like, and I was thinking like, dude, you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive, newest tennis racket from Wilson to make this happen. That is not going to do it for you.
Right. Exactly.
Do not tell me that the racket is actually going to all of a sudden reduce the stuff that you need to. So, all right, good stuff. Well, listen, Jeff, what would we like the good folks to do right now? Like we always do at the end of the podcast.
Yes, we'd love them to like us, share us, please subscribe, and let us know what you think down below.
Absolutely outstanding as always, guys. There it is out there. Get out there, help someone else have a great day. Jeff, we're going to do this again tomorrow.
Can't wait.